I'm not looking at 30 minutes. I had to go down like sort of I was afraid I was gonna like break my headset was sweating too much. If you break it from sweat, it's not gonna hurt.
Yeah, just a hard drive. Connect to the internet. I remember that. It's like, oh, you want to watch this movie here? Your money at work. We can wait 5 minutes. No, the red box. If it burns, instead of having to stop.
Oh, anyway, okay.
Well, I played it for the first time yesterday.
That doesn't seem too loud. Let me see if I can modify that. Yeah. That works okay, right? Let's do that. There we go. All right. Thank you all for coming out. Oh, it's a new carpet. 2 feet 2. Thank you for coming out. Let's see. How many of this is your first LVTech meetup? A bunch of you. Okay. Some of you are not telling me the truth. But it felt like most of you were. So this is, we do one meetup a month, generally speaking, some technical topic, sometimes more in-depth than others. Hopefully, most of the time we try to have a demo in the beginning, and we're going to have a demo right here for about 10 or so minutes of Falcon, am I saying that right? Falcon Systems, who were the winners of our pitch event that was 2 months ago now, I believe. So if you like the meetup, we'd love for you to join meetup.com or meetup.com/LVTech, and you can find out all the upcoming meetups there and tell some friends. We seem to have a lot of new faces frequently, so I don't know what exactly I need to do to get everybody to come back. But if we had everybody come back, we'd fill this room, and then it'd be an awkward problem for Wayne. Which I will also mention thanks to Ben Franklin Tech Ventures for letting us use this space. They do that every month. Next month's meetup is going to be not here, but down the mountain a little bit in the south side of Bethlehem at the Northampton Southside campus, their new Fab Lab. So if you're interested in things like 3D printing and modern prototyping techniques, additive manufacturing, laser cutters, really cool stuff, you should go to that. They have a really, I haven't seen it yet. I saw it when it was in construction, but they've remodeled the entire first floor, and half of that space is dedicated to the Fab Lab. So a lot of space, some very interesting tools, and the nice thing about the Fab Lab is they are completely open to the community. So pretty much anybody can come there if you're willing to be trained on whatever equipment you're going to use. Anybody can come there and use the equipment. So without much more, I'm going to turn it over to these guys. Just also want to let you know, if I leave suddenly, it's because my wife is a week and a half overdue, and I'm just going. So somebody turn off the camera and the lights, and that would be great. But I'm going to turn it over to these guys to demo their security product.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for the invite back. Obviously, we're very happy to be here. So I'm Zach. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Falcon Systems, although since there's only like 5 of us, I don't know if that means much of anything. And this is Nick, my co-founder. So obviously, in keeping with the theme of today, which one of the themes is that we're going to talk about ransomware, we're going to specifically be talking about and showing off a little bit of the pre-alpha of our software's capabilities to mitigate ransomware attacks and basically what it can do for you. Before we do that, though, it is important to really frame the problem, specifically in the cybersecurity space. Although from the outside, a lot of people think the most important thing is protecting data. In reality, the most important thing is not losing money. It's the whole reason we're protecting data in the first place, after all. That's why risk analysis exists. So obviously, these are stats which I'm sure, as many of you guys are security people, you've seen them before. But the cost of the data breach is very high, is what it comes down to. And more importantly, on top of the cost of the data breach just from data loss or fines you have to pay to an organization like HIPAA or, well, there's tons of them. I'm not going to bother listing all of them off. On top of that, you're going to deal with business downtime. And business downtime can be a real cost too. Last year, the average incident cost $35,000 in business downtime. And that's the average ranging from even the tiniest company of like 3 people all the way up to large enterprises. And obviously it fluctuates based on the amount of time that you're put out of commission. But it's important, so why do you get put out of commission? Well, even if you are well prepared for ransomware, which a lot of people are nowadays, you have backups ready, you have everything, maybe you use Windows shadow balling or something along those lines, it's still going to take a little bit of time for you to restore that. So that person is currently out of the operation for about an hour, or depending on what organizations you have to report to. I know for hospitals it's HIPAA. If you have to report to HIPAA, you have to write a forensic analysis and tell them what happened. You have to say, hey, we had a breach. This is how it happened. And that means that you're going to have to take that computer, bring it out of rotation. So you're looking at maybe 3 to 4 hours of that person not really being able to do their job to their full capacity. So the question is, how are we going to get rid of that downtime, right? Because obviously, it's really hard to just avoid ransomware as a whole. We try to coach users on what not to do. We have next-gen antivirus with better detection schemes, but as long as there's something new and as long as the threat is going to be pervasive, eventually you might get caught in something, even if your security config is rock solid. Since 85% of ransomware, at least in 2017, was spread through the web browser, we figured that would be a good place to start. And to talk a little bit more in depth about how we are doing what we do, and hand it over to Nick, and we're going to demo our pre-alpha version.
All right. So how can we possibly address this problem that we have of like all kinds of malicious code coming through the browser? Well, we chose to take the browser and just isolate it from the rest of the system through the use of the virtual machine. So here I have a virtual machine. Within the virtual machine here I have nothing actually, because I need to actually set it to duplicate the screen. Sweet. Cool. Here's the oh, it was so here's what your plain computer, here's what a typical workstation might look like. So we have our product running with this little demo controller. Now I've already started it. We can start our virtual machine that's containing the browser by pushing a button. This is just for demo purposes, so we have it looking like this. And you'll come up with something like this. Here's our Firefox start page. Now, one of the biggest things about any kind of security software is, frankly, it doesn't matter if your users won't use it, or if they complain about it, or if it's too complex. So our goal from the beginning was to make a browser implementation as some kind of security system that would be completely non-intrusive to the user. Now, this just looks like, to a user, like it's just regular old Firefox running. But this is actually Firefox running within the virtual machine that's having its graphics forwarded to Windows. So it looks like a Windows app, has the same controls as a Windows app, so you wouldn't necessarily have to retrain anyone on how to use it, but since it's running within a virtual machine, you have all the added benefits of that kind of isolation. The biggest one of which being, you can detonate all kinds of malicious code in here, and it won't be able to touch your Office files or anything outside the computer. For instance, I just Google searched for malicious PDF. I'd like you all to appreciate the irony of a getting owned by a malicious PDF analysis file being a PDF. Now, let's say that this PDF was indeed malicious, and that somebody on the internet is going to just open it. That's the kind of thing that's going to open your browser, since it is running within a virtual machine. The worst that it can do is just crash the virtual machine, come near the browser. But the interesting part that we have here, you can actually kill it. And we have some event detection software that tries to detect abnormal patterns, tries to detect some kind of malicious code running, and you can just kill it. So what you get there is, and it froze because it's dying slowly. When you kill the virtual machine, it actually discards all of the temporary data, meaning that anything that person may have saved, any kind of malicious code that they may have downloaded, for instance, if you've ever seen any browsers that people have that have tons of like malicious extensions installed that are commenting their search page, their home page, everything, then by simply closing the virtual machine, by simply closing the app, you've wiped all of that out because it is all transient. You can simply start again and open up Firefox like nothing happened. Now, we spoke about ransomware earlier, and I would have loved to show a live ransomware demo, which wouldn't have really done much, but the greatest thing is we couldn't actually find a ransomware demo that would run within this virtual machine, even if we wanted to. And the reason for that is because the virtual machine isn't running Windows. The greatest thing about it is our virtual machine has Firefox running in an actual lightweight Linux distro that we created that clocks in at a little under 135 megs, which I'm personally pretty proud of. But we have, since it's running on Linux, you get, everyone says, oh, with Mac OS, why don't you switch to a Mac? They don't get viruses. Apple says Macs don't get Windows viruses, and that's true. And our platform doesn't get Windows viruses for exactly the same reason. It's not running Windows, but the difference is we wouldn't be trying to sell you an Apple computer. This can be dropped into an existing Windows installation and can basically give you all the safety and security of running Linux, but without actually running Linux. You can keep using your Windows software the way it is. And because my computer is running some nested virtualization here, sometimes it's a little slow to start, but here we go. You get your Firefox. At the beginning, I froze this one while it was checking for an update, so it starts up and continues checking for the update because it doesn't know that anything happened. And here's your completely fresh Firefox instance. So yeah, just point and click. Just it wants to restore the start page because I froze it that way. But yeah, that means all the user would have to do is just close the window and open it again, and they are virus-free. Switch back to the presentation. So there are a number of threats that we can prevent this way, and what? Alright, so we can basically this way prevent a lot of common attacks that someone will get while using a browser. Maybe even potentially using a browser at work to access non-work related things. But who would ever do that? That would just be dangerous. So any kind of threats that may come through, ransomware we discussed, drive-by downloads, you want to download your whatever like fancy screensaver.exe, it just won't run. You can try to run it with wine if you want. Good luck with that. We also can heavily mitigate social engineering attacks, and the way that we can do that is that the worst that you could do, maybe you give someone your credentials, no one can really stop that, but let's say it's some kind of remote access tool that if you've ever seen I'm sure you've seen the like Windows tech support scams, someone will download and try to run some kind of remote access tool. Most likely it won't run at all, but let's say it does. Let's say they've used TeamViewer and they're savvy enough to target with, for instance, the Linux version. Even if some kind of malicious code is running within this virtual machine, all that they'll be able to access is, well, information within the virtual machine. Since it's running in a virtual machine, it doesn't know what kind of data the host has, so that also helps with, for instance, zero-day attacks like the Rowhammer exploit or something like that, that used to try and grab certain parts of memory. If you don't know what memory is there with less knowledge of the actual host's hardware, even super fancy trick shot attacks like that have a much lower chance of succeeding. And since we have the entire operating system running in such a way that it can be monitored by a host outside, we can even deal with browser mining or something like that. We have a system that will detect abnormal CPU usage, abnormal disk usage, things like that within the virtual machine. And if something is pegging your CPU by like maxing it out by browser mining, you'll be able to tell really easily, and we can just have the machine automatically restart. Now for our first release, we plan to bring a few features. For one, we have, well, native lightweight virtualization. The big impact here, I've seen some, there are some solutions like, for instance, Citrix XenApp or VMware Horizon that might make it so that you can run applications remotely for a little bit of a different purpose than what we do. But those kinds of solutions, I guess, could be finagled into something security related, but that requires a big application server. This doesn't. This can actually run on the endpoints that a business would already have, and as such be using what I have so far seen to be untapped power. And we'll also have insights on container restarts. We're going to have a system in place that will automatically restart the container in the event of some things we discussed before. Some, like for instance, something abnormally using the CPU. It will tell you what caused the restart. So that'll be useful for instance, forensics, auditing, whatever you may like. Now, one big cool thing that we're trying to do here is in the event of malicious code running, or in the event that a person kills the virtual machine because they think something might be wrong with it, what we can do that, for instance, if you've seen solutions like deep freeze, where you can just restart the computer, what we can do that some other solutions don't have in play is that we can actually save the memory of the running virtual machine and save the transient disk as it existed in RAM, meaning that you now have a snapshot frozen in time of what was running on that computer at the time that someone believed something malicious was running, or perhaps at the time that maybe you know something malicious was running. So even if there's an attack targeted towards your business, some kind of code, something like targeted to you that the world has never seen before, you now have a copy of it, even if it only existed in RAM, which as of yet is something we have definitely not seen a lot of other tools do. And of course, we'll give you some more basic insights on poor user behavior. Where are your users going? What are they clicking on? What are they downloading? That's causing all kinds of ruckus within your computer. But that's what it is.
All right, so yeah, along with all the features, we do have a release schedule. We are actually about to hit a major code sprint, which is why we only showed our pre-alpha today. We are actually much farther along, but it's not nearly as stable. And we'd rather have a stable presentation than one that might crap out right in front of all you guys. But we are currently we are on schedule for our beta, which is going to be coming out October 2nd. We're working with organizations such as PPL, UPMC, Takata, and LSC Communications, large trucking company. And we do have a couple slots open. If any of you are that type of customer, feel free to come up and talk to us after the event. And then we will be continuing to plug along throughout our beta. It's going to be very active. We're going to be pushing patches out throughout the whole time to try and fix any complaints that anyone might have and to add additional features, because those version 1 features should actually be ready by our beta. And then on May 25th of 2019, obviously this is a rough estimate, but that is when we are anticipating our version 1 release. And this is our contact information if you would like to learn more and get a little bit more into the technical details of how everything works. Feel free to come up and talk to us afterwards or reach out to us at any of these numbers. Thank you.
Any questions as we're setting up next?
So if someone runs some ransomware, malware inside your virtual machine, do like a keystroke logger, or mine the cookies from the browser, they'd still be able to access that, would they not?
Well, can you say that again? Sorry.
Okay, so if there's some malware out there that's like a keystroke logger, and you're on an internal network and you're logging into corporate documents, or it's mining the cookies for saved passwords or other things.
Yeah, well, I mean, for one, the way that it's set up right now, anything that you save doesn't, like any kind of browser setting or whatever, doesn't necessarily save itself. We actually, the personal opinion, should be discouraging saved passwords, but in the event that you have them, well, for one, simply running Linux is kind of the defense in and of itself, even though not directly. There isn't a lot of malware that runs there, but even if it's something browser specific, we actually have some, we have some code in play to try and detect, like for instance, you have a platform, you have like Firefox well, it's not .exe, if you have your Firefox process running, anything other than that, any kind of external process other than a few approved ones that should be running, will trigger closure of the virtual machine.
Grab that. And introduce Rich gets his laptop hooked up. Rich is a information security professional, been working Einstein Health Network for what, 10 years you said?
Well, I've been at Einstein for just over 2 years now.
Okay.
Before that I was at Jefferson. I was there for about 8 years. And before that I worked for a couple of law firms.
So managing security from the standpoint of understanding the vulnerabilities and how people can get in and protect the
Yeah, I'm the lead security engineer for Einstein Health Network. So I report to the CISO. So I work closely with the CISO. So we work closely with the IT departments and making sure that we're as secure as we can be. We do our internal forensic investigations, our regular computer investigations. We work with like the networking teams that like trying to put in like a good architecture And then we also, do other things. We're a medical institution, so we do a lot with the OCR and HIPAA regulations. My group also handles privacy, although I don't do that because I like my hair where it is. Excuse me. But yeah, that's a quick summary of it.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Rich, who's going to talk about ransomware and then some of the recent microprocessor level vulnerabilities. So.
Yeah, we're not going to get too deep into anything, but I'll give you a good overview of what's going on, and if I remember what my password is.
Password.
Is it not detecting it right?
The math was just There we go. All right, ransomware and meltdown inspector. So this will be broken up into two big parts. I'm going to talk about ransomware for a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about meltdown inspector together for a little bit. So who let the ogre in? I am the ogre. My name is Richard Urbe, as we just said. I'm the lead security engineer for Einstein Health Network. My family calls me the ogre, but also I have layers like the good ogre does, and just like any security program has layers too. So, right somewhere. So just to kind of set a little bit of expectations of what some things we're not going to talk about. This isn't an in-depth analysis into a particular strain of man ransomware. We're not going to go real deep into some of the more obscure techniques that people talk about, such as like recursive directories to try and fool malware, or setting up honeypots or honey tokens. There's lots of very good documentation on that out there, but if you're going down that road, you want something a little bit more in depth than we're going to do here. We're not going to talk about like the history of the different variants and strains, like how Locky led to CryptoLocker, et cetera, and so forth. I'm also not selling or promoting anything, which is fine sometimes, but know that I'm not trying to pitch anything. So this is just information from my head. I'm saying a lot, sorry. It's been a long day. Some things we're also not going to talk about. We're not going to talk about Princess Tea parties, Ninjago, or so you think you can dance, because I get enough of that at home. I don't need it when I'm not there. So what is this about? So my hope is to provide a general understanding of the ransomware kill chain, right, and some of the different ways that organizations can protect themselves, and some of the different tools that are in place to help thwart the attacks before they become the attacks. So what is ransomware? Ransom plus software equals ransomware. It's essentially, it is what it sounds like. It's software that tries to prevent a user from accessing that data until somebody pays them money. Now it's usually done using public key cryptography to encrypt the files, but it's been done in other ways, like changing people's passwords, not giving them the password until they get something back. Sorry, another way was on my tongue, but it slipped out, so I'm gonna move on. So I mentioned kill chain. That's a thing. So let's talk about it for a little bit, just to get on the same page. So it's a term that was originally used by the military. It's when defenders were talking about attacks coming against them, and it was a way for them to describe different ways to prevent the attacks before they became the attacks, right? So before you do an attack, you got to do certain things, right? You got to case or do a robbery, right? So you got to case the joint. You got to analyze what security they have in place. You got to get your tools ready. You got to break into make it. Then you got security measures, right? So this goes to having layers, right? You got different layers in different places to put in your preventions. Security, or defense in depth is the term, another term that gets spouted a lot. So when we're talking about ransomware and ransomware attacks, there's usually two main ways that we see this in the wild, right? So we have our drive-by and our targeted. These are just my terms for it. The drive-by is what you see about a lot, right? You see it on your buddy's computer because he clicks all the links and you know he's going to spend too much time in his room by himself because his girlfriend left him, so he's found all the cool websites. But that's where an attacker, they're putting out a net and they're seeing what they can catch in, right? Then you have targeted attacks. That means some malicious actor has their eyes on you and or your organization, right? So they're looking to get at you. So they're not trying to catch a bunch of different people, they're looking at you. And so while it's the same kind of attack, they're two different little bit of methodologies. So we're just going to look at two different kill chains. So in brief, these are the two different kill chains, right? So we got lure, your phishing, lure. Your infection, communication, encryption, ransom, right? It's all pretty simple. And then if you're doing a target attack, you have OSINT, your open source intelligence, your case in the joint, right? Your phish or your infiltration, your lateral movement, then your encryption, and then the ransom, right? Both ransomware attacks, the end bit's a little bit the same. So here is the lure, right? So this is where an attacker will send out the bait, right? So this is where we're talking about a non-target attack, like a drive-by, right? So this is going to be a spam mail. They're going to sell some body enhancement medication or some Mexican supplements, or actually probably Canadian supplements would be a better term. So you're going to see that, right? So this is the first step. So this is where something like I think what Valtrain Software is saying, this is somewhere they can, right? But some traditional defenses we'll put in there is ad blockers, right? We want to. There's lots of bad ads out there. They do all sorts of other stuff, crypto mining, just regular malware. We want to stop them too. Web content filters, keep an updated list of stuff. Looking at Umbrella or WebSense or just ForcePoint now, I think. So we want to stop it before it becomes an issue, right? We want to get a good user education program out there. So we want to let our new users know, hey, this is a thing. Because they will click on anything, no matter how much you tell them not to click the thing, they will click the thing. But you can bring the number of people clicking the things down. That guy who you put a banner on his email that the email is not from the university, and then you block the website, he'll then grab his phone and go to the website, and then he'll go, oh, that's my work device, I gotta go to my personal device, and then put in his credentials. That guy's still there, we still have to deal with him, but we can hopefully limit the people. So another thing is to not allow admin accounts to browse the internet. So that is a hard one to fight, and what is your greatest ally will become your greatest enemy in this is the IT guys. So your server administrators, your desktop administrators, the network guys, you gotta get them on a different admin account. You gotta get them to not let those admin accounts out to the internet. So, because if one of those guys gets hit, they have keys to the kingdom, right? So infection. So when all that doesn't work, the next thing that happens is the malicious file gets executed on the machine, right? So one of the first things it's going to do is it's going to look to establish some kind of persistence. It's going to copy itself to a run key. It's going to throw itself into a service. It's going to do something. If you've ever run auto runs and looked at all the things that are there, it's going to try and throw itself in there somewhere. It wants to be there. But a lot of that stuff that's persistence is something that is loggable and checkable, and unless you're doing it, doesn't happen on a regular basis. So some ways to stop that, initial infection from happening is endpoint protection software, right? There's lots of it out there. invest in some. The more popular ones are going to be a little bit easier to deploy and manage, but then they're going to be a little bit more popular, and then attackers are going to know more workarounds for them. Don't let your users have admin privileges. I know that sounds a lot easier than it is, but it's something that will help a lot. Keep your admins from browsing the internet and keep your regular users from having admin. That can help a lot just from the amount of stuff you have to deal with. Using separate accounts for your admin tasks, right? You get an admin account, use that elevate when you need to. Keep your software up to date, right? Not just your operating system, right? A lot of people are getting on board with operating system updates. I've always been fighting the fight of trying to get updates quicker. We got over 90% updates within 30 days where I work now, and it's still too slow sometimes. So, and then you're still going to have systems that, like, oh, we bought this software and we can't upgrade because, thingy, and, we can't afford the new software. So yeah, we'll run your update if you give us $150,000. And it's a dumb thing, but you got to fight those fights. And then whitelisting. Whitelisting is hard, but it's not impossible. If you're not familiar with whitelisting, that's using a tool like AppLocker to just list the applications that you want to allow to run on your machine and run nothing else. So another thing I don't have listed here, but that can help out is, and this is a quick easy win, is changing the default app for script files, right? So take your JS extension, JSE, WSH, and instead of the default app being C script, change it to Notepad, right? It'll still open, but it'll open in Notepad and it'll just be garbage, and then your users will be complaining about Notepad opening instead of their application, causing them to get owned. So, those are some easy things to help when you're looking at the infection stage. So communication. So once the ransomware has some persistence and has a foothold on the system, the next thing it's going to want to do is it's going to want to talk to its command and control server, right, or its C2 server. When it does, it'll usually send some unique info about the machine so that the C2 server knows who it is, and then the server will generate a public-private key pair, right? And then it'll send that public key back down to the machine, and then it'll associate that ID it got with the private key, and that's how it knows to give you the right key to decrypt your computer later. And then, is everybody here familiar with public key cryptography? So like the basics of it, like there's two keys, one key unlocks, one key encrypts. Okay. But this all requires talking out on the internet. So some things you can do to help that are getting some threat intel feeds, right? There's companies out there that Palos, Semantics, Deep Insight, just two of them off the top of my head. But they'll keep lists of known C2 servers, right? Like, oh, we found through our own investigations that this server's running a CryptoLocker C2 server, right? Well, if you can get one of those feeds, you can ingest it into something and then just start blocking those communication to those devices, right? Most of your next-gen firewalls are going to have that kind of functionality built in with the IPS portion of it. An IPS is another good tool that'll look at the signatures of data going back and forth. Sometimes it can pull out a signature for a callback to see what it looks like and stop that connection before it happens. Get proxy servers, proxy web filters, right? Then you can, because a lot of the times this wants to communicate over HTTP or HTTPS because it wants to get the best bang for its buck, right? A lot of people turn off, like you can't just connect on port, 5,492 out onto the public internet, right? So, they'll do it over HTTP or DNS. So you want to put DNS security in. You want to put some kind of web filtering in to try and look at that web traffic as it's going, make sure people are going to the right sites. Another thing that attackers will do is they'll use DGA, so dynamically generated algorithmic names, so that it can kind of use DNS to kind of bounce around the communication to the C2 server. So if you've ever looked at web logs, you'll see like AQRSTD.com, then AQPZ4.com, right? And it's just got an algorithm that uses usually like date and time to generate like a domain name, and then it just registers it real quick. And before somebody figures it out, it just switches to the next one. So if you see a lot of requests like that, that's a big indicator they got something trying to call back to somewhere. So once it's gotten its told its communication to its command server, hey, I got a fish, or I got a victim, and it goes here, use this key, encrypt all the things, then it's going to try and encrypt all the things, right? They'll scan not just the local computer, they'll start looking at network drives. Like that's why you really want to keep your systems administrators off it, because they'll have access to all the network drives, right? And it'll just start encrypting all of them. You know, just go through, just keep going. So some of the things we can do, so at this point it's already doing encrypting, so we're looking for identification as quick as we can, right? One thing you can do is if you have file access monitoring turned on and you have the logging going, you can set up an alert on how quickly something accesses files, right? A regular user is not often going to access every file in a share within, like, sequentially as quick as it can, right? So if you do a little bit of baselining, you can then determine, like, oh, this is what a regular usage looks like. And then it's easily to create alerts for something that's more than that, right? So just a little caveat though, you do want to watch out for AV. You know, AV running on the server will, or on a desktop, will look at every file. So, you know, it's going to open it. So, so if you key on write times, right, because the file's going to write when you do it, that may be an easier thing to develop your alerting on. But yeah, so file access monitoring is a big one that can help point you toward there. Another one that can help prevent or limit the damage is, you know, proper ACLs, right? So making sure that you don't have everyone's shares open on your network. If you've ever been audited, I'm sure somebody ran a scan and they found a bunch, and then you had to, you know, go tell people like, no, you can't do that. So getting proper access controls in place, you know, I mean, just because like I need access to 3 files in the master share drive doesn't mean I need access to the whole master share drive. You know, the least privilege, you know, gets talked about a lot. So then the actual ransom happens, right? They usually throw a file in each directory so that you have plenty of them. They'll put a shortcut on the desktop. Usually they'll pop up an HTA or something like that. Well, that's another thing if you're redirecting file extensions, HTAs. So, so then they want, you know, so some ransomware organizations actually have like desync customer service apparently. And they'll help you figure out what's wrong with your Windows XP machine so that you can run the decryption key, right? Like they'll talk you through, like, oh, just click this button and then you get your files back. This is because their scam only works if people are willing to pay them, right? If they didn't help anybody get their data back, nobody would pay, and then it's not worth it for them, right? So if you get to where you see a ransom, you're at scorched earth territory, right? They encrypted all your stuff, you know, so who knows what else they put there. So they could have dropped, you know, some kind of rootkit. They could have dropped bot downloaders for other botnets. It's, you know, at this point you're going to wipe the drive and you're going to re-image, right? But what you can do to help with that is backups. So if you're working at a corporation, I'm sure you paid a professional. Listen to that professional. If you work at a corporation and you don't have a professional, get one. They're going to be able to look at your specific situation and give the best advice. But if you're at home or if you're 3 guys in a garage and you don't have that, if nothing else, go with 3-2-1, right? So 3 copies of your data, 2 of them on different mediums and 1 of them off-site, right? So that's just a good basic backup strategy. So now we're getting into more of a targeted attack, right? I'm looking at your organization and I want to bring you guys down and I want to hold your organization ransom, right? So we're thinking, I'm sure you've heard of like Sacred Heart in California, a couple other hospitals tried to go on divert because they had ransomware. Not a lot of details been out, so this might not be exactly that way, but you know, this is the threat that we're working with to try and prevent. So the first thing is OSINT, right? So remember when I talked about robbing a place, I talked about casing the joint? So that's what OSINT is. It's open source intelligence. There's a lot of data about you and your corporation out there on the internet. You should know what it is, right? There's much more detailed presentations about doing OSINT, but read some and do the research on yourself, right? Do a who is on your domain. Find out what, through your main website, right? Find out who's the contact. What's the email address there? Find an open source email address scraper. Scrape your website for email addresses. You might be surprised at what you find. Look at your robot.txt file, because the attacker is going to look at your robot.txt file, and everything in there it says not to go to, they're going to go to, right? So do that. Do an nmap scan against your whole public-facing IP space, right? If you've got a class B, scan that class B, see what responds, see what you can figure out, run nmap, right? You can scan your own stuff. I mean, let your work know, because if you got like a good IPS, it should say, hey, something's scanning you, but you should know what's there, right? Oh, another tool, Shodan. If you haven't messed with Shodan, essentially just scans the internet for banner headers and stuff like that. You can just put in your domain name and like admin, and hopefully not be surprised by what you find. So that's something I did before I switched jobs. Where he said, let me check Shodan to find out how big a shit show this is before I get here. Luckily I found nothing, so. But, so the next thing would be, I have here phish/infiltration. So the next step is getting into the network, right? Like again, maybe a little easier said than done, but in reality, a lot of times an attacker is going to phish you, right? This is where a lot of email protection software can help, right? So and a lot of times they're not even, for the get-go, they're not going to try and download something to your computer. They're going to try and just get you to put in credentials, right? Say you got a web-based VPN software like a Cisco ASA, right? They're going to start phishing users, and then they're going to try and log in with those credentials, right? Or they're going to take a few of those credentials and take the email addresses that they scrape from your web page, and they're going to see, oh, the email address is the username. I'm just going to try all these usernames with like these 100 easy passwords and see if any of them hit, right? So they're going to try and get in that way. So protecting against phishing, there's Proofpoint, there's Iron Ports. Those are some tools that can help with email. User education is the thing that always gets talked about, but I know a few years ago I was talking to PhishMe, and they said that they could get their click-through rate down to 20%. And I was like, that still means 20% of people are still clicking on the phishing emails. So, but you should know that, and you should phish your own users, right? TrustedSec has the Social Engineers Toolkit. You can get it for free, play around with it. You can play around with Metasploit. I don't know if the free version allows you to scrape a website and automatically set up the web server and the phish from it, but I know the paid version does. Phish your users, and there's lots of articles out there about starting a phishing program at work, but you can just start off with like, send an email that says, the subject line, this is a phishing message, right? And then just like throw like a bad phishing message that you pulled out of like quarantine or something in there, and just put like big arrows that says, do not click this, right? Because it's education, right? And then I guarantee you somebody's gonna click it. And then you go have a talk with that person. You say, look, I said don't click the thing. But in my case, they go, I don't, that's what you're here for, right? So, I can help. So, but phish your users. A, it'll get them used to looking for phishing messages. B, it'll let you know where some of your problem pain points are. And then it just helps the process. If you don't have a vulnerability management program up and running, try and do something, right? You need to understand where your holes are, right? Part of this is scripting against infiltration, right? If you don't know that you've got like MSTSC vulnerabilities on your DMZ servers, right, then you can't protect against it, right? So do Nmap scans. OpenBoss is a free utility. If you're a small company, Nessus allows you to scan up to 25 devices, right, at a time. So that's enough for, even if you have 100 servers in your DMZ, you can knock that out in four swings, right? So, run some scans. There's other tools out there, but OpenBoss is free and Nessus is the paid version of it. Multi-factor authentication, at the very least for remote access. This is a big one. I know I'm fighting this fight right now. I'm seeing a little shaking heads like, yeah, you are too. It is a huge help. I mean, because then you're not talking about having to just attack a user and get them to click the thing. Then you gotta also attack their phone, right? To get whatever it is, whatever your token mechanism is for the phone, right? Or if it's SMS, right? If it's a token, then you gotta get a copy of the token or do some kind of weird intercept. But it's just harder, right? A lot harder. Make them move on to the next guy. And then if you're not already doing it, you need to come up with standardized secure configs for your servers and desktops and laptops and cell phones and any other device you have on your network. So I know you can't always put in the security configs you want, but the more you put in, the less issues you're going to have, right? So work with your desktop team, your server team, or if you are the desktop and server team, do your best. At least start off with getting it standardized, and then it's easier to make it more secure. GPOs, keep everything consistent, hopefully, when they're not breaking everything. But so lateral movement. So I'm the attacker, right? I've cased your place. I found out about you. I fished some users. I got some credentials. I got inside, right? Once I'm there, I want to move around your network. I want to find out what's inside, and I want to get my hooks in as many places as I can, right? So because my goal is to ransom you all at once. I'm not trying to do your individual workstations. So I'm going to try and get in your servers. I'm going to get on your desktop and get the local admin credential, right? And I'm going to use that to connect all the other computers where that same admin credential works, right? So if you got the same admin credential on all your desktops, I get one, I got them all, right? Then I just got to find the one where a domain admin's logged in recently, and then I can pull the tokens from, I can pull the hashes for the domain admin password. Then I can do a pass the hash attack, and I can get access somewhere else, right? So then I'm going to find out what's your most valuable assets, right? So are you a research company? Do you keep all your super secret data on the super secret share, right? I'm going to look for that, right? So some things you can do to help prevent and identify against lateral movement is least privilege access control. We talked about this earlier. It's a popular one. Everybody talks about it. It's hard. That's why everybody talks about it, because it's hard. Make sure everybody's got access to just what they need and no more, to a certain extent. If you're a Microsoft shop, Labs, it's pretty simple to put in place. It's, people will complain, but just get them to move along is really not that much of an inconvenience. If you're not familiar with Labs, it's local administrator password solution. What it does is it randomizes the local administrator password for each computer, each Windows computer, and then it also, you can set it to change it every so often. So if I get my local admin credits on my phished user, then I don't actually have access to the computer next to this, right? I gotta go phish him too, right? Or set up like a pivot and then try and attack that other machine, right? So it just makes it harder, more likely to move on. Network segmentation, right? If you're a huge place with all sorts that's been around for 90 years or 150 years, and there's all sorts of weird interconnections, it's hard because you'll start putting up barriers and everything will start breaking. But if you're a new company or you're redesigning, putting in some network segmentation, right? Like, does your finance user need to access the HR share, right? Does your regular user need to ping the HR database, right? Do they even need to access it at all, right? Do they just need access to the web front end? So if you put those network layer boundaries in place, you can help prevent an adversary that's in your network from then moving on to those high value targets, or even being able to figure out what they are. They might see a Lawson database or a PeopleSoft website, but they might not be able to connect to the other side. Log monitoring, SIM, or an MSSP. If you're a smaller shop, an MSSP makes a lot of sense. Just ship them your logs, they're gonna put it through their SIM, and then they're gonna call you when stuff looks bad to them, right? So you don't have to do as much tuning, you don't have to look at the logs every day to keep you from doing the other parts of securing the network that you need to do. It can be a big help. Excuse me. It's rent-to-sock is what I've heard it called before. But if you're a little bit bigger or you're a little bit do-it-yourself, getting a SIM, help take in all those logs from everywhere, help you try and identify lateral movement before it happens, right? Like, oh, why is Bob logging into the HR share? He's a finance guy, right? And that should set off some alarm bells, right? So, or Dave is logged into everything, but Dave is camping, So, like, light bells. You're updating everything, right? Not just your OS, third-party applications, Adobe, Java. I mean, seeing nodding heads, everybody knows. You got to do it. The perimeter is now the endpoint. I heard somebody say that at a con or something once. So encryption, again. So one of the things that's a little different about when you're dealing with a targeted attack versus a random drive-by attack. In a drive-by attack, the attacker's going to try and encrypt your drive as quickly as possible, right? Before you notice anything going on, before you have a chance to break the computer on your own, it wants to encrypt everything. So it's going to try and do that as quickly as possible. If I'm targeting you, I'm going to try and have everything blow up at the same time, right? And then I'm going to give you a time limit, and I'm going to say you have 48 hours from now, and you can't do anything, right? If you're a hospital, you're losing millions of dollars a day if you're on divert, right? You got literal people that may die because you can't provide their care, or you don't know when the last time they had their beds was, right? So, or you can't get the results from the test you ran because it automatically gets uploaded to the EMR, but you've got nothing to look at that from. So, it's so they're going to try to hit you at once, right? So, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So, another thing to consider, the attacker, before they start encrypting, they're going to try and disable whatever backup system you have in place, right? If you're using Tivoli, or not Tivoli, or TSM, or one of those IBM products, they all begin with a T for some reason, or NetScaler, sorry, long down. But any one of many backup solutions, they're going to look for them, and they're going to try and disable them, right? So some of the things you can do beforehand is test your backup solutions, right? So one of the things you can do is test the validity of your backups, right? If the attacker gets in and they have root access to your systems, they can easily put in a filter driver to decrypt to point you to a legit copy of your data while it creates an encrypted copy, and then all at once remove those normal copies so you have just the encrypted copies left, right? And so if you look in your backups, you might just find you have a whole bunch of encrypted data in your backups, right? Or they may, depending on your backup software, they may go and just trash your backup encryption keys, right? Or if you're using some kind of tape library, right, it may just trash that tape association table, right? So test the validity of your backups, right? Test, just from a functionality standpoint, you should be testing to make sure you can restore from backups, right? I've talked to lots of people where, like, oh, I've had a lot of issues. I'm like, oh, we'll just, do you have backups? Like, yeah, I back up all the time. Okay, well, we'll just restore from backup. You go to restore from backup. I'm like, oh, I was supposed to set up this thing and I never did the thing, or, oh, the tapes are over there and it's going to be a week before you can get them out of Iron Mountain, or, or what's the one from another thing? Steel Mountain, I think. So test, make sure you can do that. I mean, that's just like a good, BC move, but I mean, it'll help doing DR. This is a DR scenario or a BC scenario. So if you have somebody set up your backup solution, have somebody test that solution, right? If you're paying for an annual pen test, include in the scope of work, like even if you do it separately, like, hey, we want to make sure that if we get hit with ransomware that we can restore from backups. So let's, test, like, if you're an attacker and you got in, how would you break our backup system? Let's test that, right? And you come up with a way that meets your risk limits to do that. Then run some tests. Like, you can start off with some tabletops, but do some tests and actually, talk about functionality. But before you get hit with a ransom, understand what it's going to take to restore everything from backup, right? Because it's like okay to think like, oh, okay, yeah, my backup system's good. I know they can't get it. We have it off-site. Nothing here can break what's there, and I have the keys sent to a separate place, so they have to really, really want to do this for a long time to get us. So, but understand what it's going to cost you to restore that, because everything that they touch, you're going to have to scorch earth, right? You're going to have to reimage from scratch. So, understand what that's like. If you got 10,000 desktops and you have to reimage them all, that's not insignificant, right? If you have, if you're not securing your endpoints, and users got user data on all that stuff, and you got to, what's the cost of that? When you're not backing up, you got to understand that too. And even your PeopleSoft database, right? Those things get huge, right? But I mean, restoring from tape's fast, but it's not that fast, right? If you've got petabytes of backups, that's still petabytes of putting it on new disks. So just understand what that is, which will help you with the next stage, right? Should you pay the ransom? I would highly prefer it if you didn't, so don't, but everybody's gonna have a different set of circumstances to make this decision, right? So I don't want you to, because that makes it less likely for the attackers to do it to me, because it's less likely that they're gonna get paid. But if you were going to pay, contact a third party, somebody that's dealt with this kind of stuff before. A lot of them have Bitcoins in, like at the ready, right? They've done this before, so they've worked with these criminal organizations. They'll know a little bit more about what's going on. Find a good consulting company. Remember that we just talked about like having to rebuild all those machines. Even if you decrypt that data, you're still going to have to rebuild those machines. You can't leave them deep. There's going to be other stuff there, and even if there isn't, would you really want to leave it that way? So you're still going to have that cost no matter what. But you got to look at those things ahead of time so that you know as an organization what your limit is for where you're going to make that kind of decision, right? So if you've thought about it ahead of time, it makes you less likely to panic when you got to think about that decision. Because if the attacker gets to this point, you're just going to show up to work one day, nothing's working, everything's borked, everybody's got a message that you got 36 hours to pay them $15,000 in Bitcoin, and then clock's ticking. So that's where you make your decision. So a lot of people ask, why would somebody do this? Because it works. Money, people get money, people pay. Lots of people paid, I'm sure. I remember when this first started getting popular, I read about, there was an ATM in New York City that would give you Bitcoins for cash, or cash for Bitcoins. And read about little old ladies that got to go with like a wad of cash, putting it into this ATM and getting a little QR code with Bitcoin, and the whole time the malware author is on the phone telling her what to do, right? It works. That's why people do it. Another reason why people might do it is just to break stuff. It is a pretty destructive thing if you don't restore it. So if you don't save that private key, you're gonna delete a ton of files, and then who knows what was there, right? So, like about a year ago, NotPetya happened, right, in the Ukraine. A bunch of systems went down, and then all of a sudden they had a version of a ransomware worm that was popular a little bit ago, but people started paying the ransom, and it was going to a Bitcoin, but none of that Bitcoin ever came out of the Bitcoin wallet. So it looks like nobody actually wanted money, right? So, so I'm not saying it's the Russians, but it was the Russians. But at least that's the conspiracy theory, right? So any questions before I move on to Meltdown Inspector about ransomware and some of that stuff? And this isn't comprehensive list, there's other things you can do, but I just want to give an overview for it. Is it good, bad? Any questions? Ooh. So Meltdown Inspector. So there is, it's super important because there was a name, and then another name, and then a website. So it's super duper important. That's the website for it, meltdownattack.com. This is just a high-level overview because it does get into the weeds of like a processor microcode if you really want to read into it. I didn't know if this was the crowd for that. I'm not the crowd for that. I just professional obligation, I guess. But we'll talk a little bit about what I'm thinking about as somebody on the blue team when I read about something like this, right? We'll get into that in a little bit. We'll talk about, at a high level, what hardware is vulnerable, because this was a hardware issue, not a software issue. Well, I mean, it's kind of one and the same, but stuff that you can do to help prevent against it, and then when will it actually be fixed? So they're both vulnerabilities in modern processors. They would use something called speculative execution, and I'm going to call this speculative execution bypass. I didn't coin that term, I'm just using it and stealing it from someone else. So there are two issues that are somewhat related. They were both made public at the same time because they use a similar type of attack. There's been different variants out of them, so if you're going online looking, you'll see like Spectre variant 2, Spectre variant 3. They're all basically the same attack with different specifics, right? Like different strains of malware. So Meltdown is essentially a breakdown between the application layer and the operating system layer. So at a real high level, exploiting Meltdown will let you access any of the physical memory on the device. So you can get an arbitrary, random piece of memory from memory that you're not supposed to have access to. But this is a computer, so you can do it again and again and again, really, really fast until you have the whole memory image. So essentially, you can get a memory image for anything that you can run code on. Spectre breaks the isolation between different applications. It essentially uses applications are written to do proper error checking. It attacks that mechanism and essentially gives it access to other memory that it shouldn't have access to. But they both work in kind of the same way. So what's some of the impacts? With Meltdown, so you might be wondering, well, what's the big deal with getting access to other memory on the machine or other memory that a process has access to, right? Remember this is a hardware issue, so that's the hardware memory, right? So Meltdown's especially kind of scary if you're thinking of a cloud-based environment, or if you're a VMware, or some kind of virtualized shop, right? I'm running a guest OS, and I'm in Azure, right? I'm running on a host, but in a guest OS, but there's a ton of other hosts there. I now have access to memory for all those machines too, right? I'm getting the physical memory from the processor, not just from what my guest OS is allocated. So that means I can, if I can ensure that I get on the same host as you, I can then get your encryption keys, or I can get your passwords that are in memory, or I can get your security tokens, right? Spectres, so think different tabs in a web browser, right? So I'm JavaScript, and I write malicious JavaScript that gets executed, and I grab the memory for all the different memory that I shouldn't have access to, even though it's in the same process. So think different tabs in a web browser, right? So then, so you go to my funky website and I run JavaScript, or I'm an ad in a page, and you're on JavaScript on another tab, you open up your bank account to see you know, if you have enough money to buy the weird thing that's on the page and I'm serving an app, malicious app on, I can then snoop in to see that your security token for your banking website, right? And then I can take over your banking session, and then I can transfer it to use bank statement. So, or an Amex Blue card, which would be more realistic. So, so speculative execution bypass. So I'm actually stealing this analogy. So that big word, this analogy there, but apparently I couldn't put it in. This guy named Secure Lifitz. He's a security researcher. He came up with this analogy. I just liked it, so I thought it explained it well, so I'm gonna, you know, steal it. So say you're at a library, right? And they have a secure section of books, right? And then, but you're not allowed access to that secure section of books. So you go over and you go to the librarian who manages that secure section, and you say, I'd like special book number 1 and the Sue Grafton novel that corresponds to the first letter of page 1 of that book, right? So the librarian goes, she gets special book number 1, looks at page 1, sees C, and also grabs C for corpse. Comes back to the desk, but doesn't show you the books, right? She keeps them behind the desk. Librarian scans your card, right? Then scans the first book, sees you don't have access to that book. Says, sorry, let's start over. She puts the books on a nearby shelf to be reshelved instead of taking them directly back, right? So then you catch her and you say, well, I'd like to borrow book A for Alibi. And then she goes, okay, let me go get it. And then you go, no, I need book B for Bravo, right? And then she goes, okay, well, let me go get it. And then you go, no, I'm sorry, I need book C for Charlie, or C for Corpse, right? She goes, oh, that's right. And so you can see it's a timing attack. It's a side channel timing attack, right? So then you just start all over, right? And but this is a computer program, so you just do it over and over and over and over again, and then pretty soon you got an arbitrary length of the valid memory, right? So that's without talking about like the microcode, that's essentially what's happening. Speculative execution tries to do, it does branching and does try to do predictive analysis on the code that's going to be run next. So sometimes, so even though you can't see that code next, you can say, oh, run this, and if you can tell the timing between something fetching something from longer storage or fetching something from what's readily available, you can see what was there, right? So if you know what you were asking for first, you know what's there. So, he also says like, there's ways to fix that. Which is the patches that have been going around. But essentially, fixing that causes everything to run slower. So everybody talks about like the performance impact, but that's because it's no longer doing speculative execution everywhere. It's doing it like only for stuff, like it's checking your ID before you get up to the library. And so you can only go ask the librarian if you have access to it, right? So it's making everything else take a lot longer. So that's why that performance hit everybody complains about, but it has to be there, right? Because we're dealing with the actual architecture of the chips, right? So if you buy the chip until you run the operating system update, it's vulnerable. So what is vulnerable? There's a lot of discussion about this when this first came out. It's been a while, so everybody's kind of figured it out by now. But essentially, every Intel processor since 1995, including one you go buy off the shelf right now, excluding Itanium and pre-2013 Atom processors because they just didn't do this. AMD appears to be only impacted by Spectre and its variants. So there was some, was AMD affected, was it not? But Meltdown doesn't appear to affect AMD, so the Spectre does. Some ARM processors appear to be, but it's, if you want to know, go to the website. It was hard to come up with like a before here or after then. So that's everything, pretty much. Like probably every laptop in here, including mine. So what can you do? Pay attention and stay up to date. You know, read about it, go to the website, you know, pay attention to the news. There's lots of different places, you know, go to Slashdot, go to, there'll probably, something like this will probably be there, go to, you know, there's lots of, you know, news sites, The Verge, whatever your news site of choice is, or news aggregator choice is, I'm sure you'll see something about this if it comes out. Stay up to date on your Windows patches, your OS patches, because that's where these will come out. Linux has been patched for a while, but Mac OS was a little slow to party with the updates, and Windows, you know, so unfortunately, you know, Intel gave Microsoft, said, hey, put this code in there, and then they had to back out of it because it caused a bunch of issues and they had to issue new ones, and everybody's like, nah, F it, I'm not running updates, so it's a little bit hard. If you want to, just go buy a Ryzen machine. I mean, so yeah, some of that new stuff's nice, like, I don't know, like a bajillion cores. Yeah, they're coming out, they have that new, with that Vega integrated for laptops and stuff, yeah. So, AMD's making, hopefully AMD's making a comeback, but, so that's what you can do right now. When will it be fixed? Intel has said that so the issue is with chips currently being sold, so the current models out there have it. Intel's working on architectural changes, but they take a while to make it into production. So they've said, I read a couple of different reports, but it looks like quarter 3 or 4 of this year that they'll start selling chips with the fix. But then it'll be completely fixed, they say. So, this was in the template. I just love this, so I wanted to leave it in here. But I didn't want to take this time to talk about my kind of view as a blue team member when I hear about something like this, right? So, so when I hear about this, the first thing I'm doing is reading about it, like, and then I'm trying to take the attacker's mindset of what I can do with this, right? It's like offense informs the defense. So I want to say like, oh, what could I do with this? So something like Meltdown, I can do a lot, right? Or I could imagine a lot being done, right? Something like Spectre seems pretty bad too, right? So then I want to look at how likely is this to affect me, right? Like, when you read about something, if it's affecting PeopleSoft, but I'm a Boston company, I don't care, right? But if it's something that I use, I want to see how much would I use, right? So then I'm looking at like specific versions of like Windows, and if something has, or that's where my inventory management is going to be crucial, because I want to see like, oh, how many things do I have out there that are vulnerable to this version of 7-zips, right? So then once I have that, then I know, I get an idea of like, if this goes bad, how much of it will be an impact to me. And then I want to see, well, what can I do to fix it, right? Like, is there a patch already, right? It's one of the times, a lot of times, like the patch comes out when the notice comes out, right? So then you're like, oh, we got a patch, right? So another thing I'm going to take into consideration is when they start talking about it, is there actual exploit code available, right? So if you're not familiar, vulnerability just means there's a potential, right, for something bad to go wrong, right? An exploit is writing code that actually does the bad thing, right? So then if there's test exploit code out there, usually that's a big, like, move fast button, right? Because that means the attackers don't have to think, they just got to copy paste, right? So that's one big key, you know, but then I have my own threat landscape, right? So what are the systems that are vulnerable? So I'm trying to just develop like an internal risk model of how bad is this for me, right? And then what is it going to cost to then implement, right? So luckily, a lot of times it's just patch it, right? So that's why keeping your systems up to date, running your security patches, you know, understanding what's out there. But then sometimes there's systems you can't patch, right? So I work in a hospital. We have medical devices that are connected to XP computers, right? And so we deal with this all the time, right? So it's hard because and sometimes it's political because the shadow IT radiology department wants to have all their stuff on the network so they can treat it just like a regular server. But then you're like, buddy, this is a 2003 server that's running SMP1. No, right? Like, so you you fight those fights a lot. But then you'll come up with compensating controls to put those in place. But that's kind of my mindset when I'm reading about something like this. And then I'm talking to the other members of my IT team, right? So I work real closely with the IT team where I work because we don't have a huge information security department. So essentially I just like deputize somebody when there's an issue. Right? Just go to a matter and say, hey, I'm grabbing Bob. Bob's gonna help me because we got this thing, I need to push out a thing and it's gonna happen, right? And then, you know, usually everybody's okay, usually, right? You can only pull them in for an all weekender so many times. So try not to do it well. That's just kind of it in my mindset. So thanks, this is me. I don't know what that is, Brooklyn Ridge maybe, I don't know, it's in the template. But that is me. That's my email. If you have questions, you can email me. It might go to spam. It's Gmail, they're doing analytics. I'm on Twitter. Not a big poster on Twitter, but if you want to DM me or something, I'll respond back, but I'm not a good follow, as they say. So, I had a website for a while, but then I never updated it, so I took it down, so it's running a file not found page right now. But I hope to put something back up there soon, but life gets in the way. So that's kind of it for my presentation. Any questions about the meltdown part or anything I talked about? Yeah.
I'm coming from a layman, just really curious about this, and when you were talking about the meltdown, and you were saying that's more a hardware thing, does that get in the same way as the vulnerability
Yes.
you're talking? I didn't know if there was something.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't do a good job explaining it. So it's a so I was trying to stress it's a hardware issue because that's where the issue is. It's right, it's in the code that's like built onto the chip, right? But it's exploited by software running on the machine, right? So it's an issue with the way the processor handles interactions with code.
So it's somebody who can write the software to know how to use it.
Yeah, so that's why they were able to come up with OS patches to try and mitigate it, and then that's why they've had different iterations of it. But people try and take advantage. Yeah, but it's still there.
Things to stop it, but of course
Yeah.
because it's hardware.
Yeah, but it's not like so I guess what I should have called out maybe a little better is it's not like a firmware update can fix this. So it's like if you take your hard drive out, put a new hard drive in, if you don't update that OS, that OS has the problem, right? That hardware is going to have that problem.
There was some BIOS updates that came out.
Yeah.
For the newer systems.
Yeah, so, but I still don't think that they fixed the issue completely. They just try and mitigate it from what I understand.
Well, it updates the microcode at boot, so like the processor doesn't actually get the code update, but then right at boot on the BIOS level,
Yeah.
it actually updates the microcode as good as they can.
Yeah, so it's
Actually, the Linux kernel patch does the same thing.
Yeah.
The kernel level for Linux.
yeah. There's KPIC or something like that was the initialism for it, or acronym, whatever one is. But yeah, I forget exactly what it is. But yeah, that's been out for a little bit. But yeah, it's the same thing, right? So it's the hardware itself is not there. So, so that's what I was just trying to stress with that. That's why I kept saying it. So. Any other questions or? Yeah.
So from a user controlling the stupid people, are those third-party password vaults that can generate randomized passwords, are those worthwhile or is that?
I think they're worthwhile, and yeah, like for sure. So it depends on. There's like a lot of things. There's a lot of variables. But some of the things to consider. So if you're talking about like an internal password vault where like I check out an account, or are you talking about like LastPass?
Like LastPass, one password.
Oh yeah. So LastPass definitely is worth it because the big problem is password reuse, right? So like there's a website called haveivcode.com, and you can put in an email address and see like all the all the dumps that it's been in. But if you use a password for something that's got pwned on there, you can, and I get like, so say I get your date password, right? But then I can use that to log into your bank if you're using the same password. So something using like LastPass will then randomize your password generation. And then, so it'll also force you to use a complex password on a site where they might not do the best error checking, right? So say they're not checking like password failures, right? They're not logging, they don't care, they're just running a forum and give two shits. So they just turn off that logging feature. If I find out about that and I know that your business password is probably going to be the same thing as your Linus Tech Tips password, right? I'm just going to brute force Linus Tech Tips until I get your password and then log into your work account, right? So something like a password vault with randomizes passwords. You don't even have to remember them. You can just say send in my password with the Chrome plugin. I think they're worth it. I think then you're banking on them doing a good job with the stuff that they're supposed to do a good job on. So that's doing some research on the company, looking at issues they may have had in the past, how quickly they respond to things. Multi-factor. So where I work, we're not pushing for Vault, we're pushing for multi-factor right now. So it's a hard fight, but it's because it's not hard to do, it's hard to get users to do, right? PEPCAT, right? So if you've ever read user-friendly, but problem exists between keyboard and chair, right? That's security issue number one. But yeah, multi-factor makes everything so much harder. So, but I think you can. I'm not a LastPass user personally, but I think you can integrate it with a YubiKey. So if you could do something like that, that just ups the security a lot. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll get away from passwords altogether and just use other forms of. But any other questions? Or any other topics we want to discuss about? Remember, no new doggo, no princess tea parties, no so you think you can dance.
All right, thank you. So I'll just note that there's still pizza. So you can grab some if you want. I didn't check, but I'm pretty sure there's still pizza. And if you have any interest in new cutting-edge prototyping, things like that, definitely check out next month's meetup. I'm trying to think what we have for August. I think August we're going to talk about the blockchain from a technology standpoint and not a cryptocurrency standpoint, just what exactly it is and how it's being applied to other things other than cryptocurrency, how even there's some industries, financial industries outside of cryptocurrencies, financial industries using it to track transactions. Specifically, there's a mortgage company or a mortgage service that's looking at it as a way to ensure that banks don't pledge the same assets twice, using the blockchain as a way to verify what assets have been pledged. Healthcare is talking about doing it for patient records, things like that. So we look at the blockchain from a
Companies are also using it to inflate their stock price for 24 hours.
We're also doing that. So talk about that in August, and then, like I say, in July, next month, we're going to be on the Fab Lab. Should be a pretty interesting meetup. Love to have you out there. Grab some pizza, and we'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not that I know that.
But I've never been up here. This is spectacular.
Okay.
Do you ever think there are?
Oh, really? It's like I could walk around.
Correct. We're not quite sure what we're doing.
Well, your placement was very